this video I'm going to talk about state-dependent learning. If we search online for state-dependent learning, we will find mostly research based on state-dependent memory, which is also an important issue for us pianists. But in the case of state-dependent learning, I think it's important because to relate to our practice time. Because what we do in the practice room is very different from what we do sometimes in performance, and it shouldn't be that way. Because usually what happens is that when we go on the stage, everything changes and then we underperform, or we don't perform as well as we could if our practice has been different. So what can we do in the practice room to change that? To achieve better and more consistent results when we go on stage. Also, when I first heard about state-dependent learning, one thing that came to my mind was the many technical approaches to piano technique, the many different systems we can find around the world, different teachers that claim to give us better tools to play the piano, to make us feel more secure when we go on stage, to make us play in a more efficient way. And I think although most of those systems have a lot to offer in terms of insights about fingering, about pedaling, about many things in piano technique, most of them fall short regarding performance, regarding going on stage. And for me it became even more clear now, after researching a little bit about state-dependent learning, that those approaches are not flexible enough. So when we go on stage, we want to keep our wrists high, or want to keep our wrists low, or want to sit low or sit high according to the system, and it just does not work that way. And why? I think it's because every piano is different, is a little different at least. The piano we practice is never, except for a few pianists in the world, like Christian Zimmerman or Andras Schiff, we usually don't play in the same pianos we practice. So we have to be flexible, we have to find a way, a technique that will work in both pianos in the same way or a similar way. So for me that is the first reason a technique system can't work always. Because our bodies doesn't work that way. We can't just fix one part of the body, put it in a fixed position, and then think everything will work from there. No, our body is flexible. We can just sit wherever, however we want. We don't need to sit straight always. We don't need, of course, we need to use our bodies in a healthy way, in a way that will not bring us injury in the future. But there are many ways to move, there are many ways to use our bodies and to play this instrument or other instruments. So we need to keep in mind, of course, to stay healthy. That is an important thing, so we can improve and keep practicing our instruments throughout our whole lives in a way that will not injure us, but in a way that is flexible, that is efficient, but it's flexible. One of the first things we may be doing wrong in the practice room is sound. It's sound in terms of volume, in terms of playing big. In the practice room, everything sounds big, because usually the practice room is very small and we have a piano, a grand piano if we are lucky enough. We have a grand piano that sounds very big, so we get like we get a wrong impression. So the first thing we should do in the practice room is to play bigger than our perception of big, of playing big, playing loud. but not loud in a bad way, loud with a relaxed body and with a healthy sound. So the first thing we should do is exaggerate that. For example, this may sound big here, but maybe not on the stage. I remember as a piano student, when I was a teenager, a very similar situation to the one narrated by Dr. William Westney in his book, The Perfect Wrong Note. I was to perform a simple Bach minuet in a student recital, and then as I was getting close to my time, to my turn of performing, I started to question some things that I never thought about before and during my lessons. Like, for example, which note the piece began, which note in the left hand I had to play, because the right hand, the melody I knew well, but I never thought about the left hand separately. Fortunately, I got away with that. My muscles were, my body went to the right place in the right time. But since then I started to pay more attention to the other notes I had to play that were not the melody. And also about performing, about the differences between performing and practicing. It's interesting to know that what we do on stage has a lot of psychological issues, has a lot to do with our psyches and with our minds and our perceptions. So once I heard in a workshop, in a piano technique workshop, the person, the teacher giving the workshop was kind of arrogant, saying that the problem is not in your mind. Nothing is psychological. Everything is in your hands, is in the technique. Really, technique is really important, but that's completely out of the reality. I mean, at least 50% of what we do is perceived. It's how we perceive the situation, how we feel on that stage, on that instrument, with those people watching. It's very psychological. It's really psychological. It's not so much technique. Because technique can work perfectly in the practice room or in a lesson, and just didn't work in a real performance. I remember a story of a friend who was a composition major, but he had a lot of facility to play the piano. So he used to make fun of us pianists, because, oh, you don't create anything, you just play what's written, it's very easy to be a performer. And he could play some hard pieces also. He had big hands and good facility at the piano. But then I remember, really, when he decided to invest in his performing career too, he playing in a master class and being completely unable to play well. And then he told me later that psychologically he felt really challenged. He felt like everybody was thinking he was playing poorly, he was not a good pianist. He felt really menaced by that situation, because he was not used to that. He would make fun of the other students, because he was never in that situation. So he didn't know what was really involved in performing in an important situation. So, yeah, we performers, we are not monkeys that just repeat what Beethoven or Chopin wrote. We have to deal with a lot of stress, We have to be really clever to memorize pieces, to solve technical problems. So it's a complex situation, and we have to develop ways of dealing with if we want to succeed in our performances. The first thing I think we should do is to perform more. In Brazil, in an old tradition of conservatories, piano students used to suffer a lot when they, or not just piano students, other students also, they used to suffer a lot when they were required to perform before an audience, even not being a big audience, because the way music was traditionally taught in conservatories was the students having many lessons and performing once a year. So then it was almost impossible for students to do their best, because they were never used to do that. I could notice that easily because I was a Suzuki student. And since the beginning, of course, we would learn the pieces by memory, and we would perform once a week sometimes in our small studio classes. So we were always performing. It was not something from the other world. So if we are to perform well someday and perform our best, the first thing we need to do is to perform often, is to start performing as soon as we can. One other important thing that should be mentioned is that when we practice, we should be aware if the piece feels comfortable in our hands, in our body, if the piece we are playing feels comfortable. Because when we go on stage and feel less comfortable or uncomfortable because of the situation itself, it's important that at least the technical part is well worked out. So one important aspect of that is fingering. We usually want to avoid fingering that is stretchy. For example, in this passage I'm going to play now, the fingering written in the edition, it seems comfortable in the first or second time you play. At least for my hands, which are not big, it becomes very stretchy as long as we repeat. And piano playing and piano practicing is a very repetitive activity. To get a piece to a level of performance, we have to repeat it many times. So I found out a better fingering that you can see I penciled on the score. And although it demands a little more movement, in and out movement of the hand on the keyboard, it feels much more comfortable and not stretchy at all. When we think about body mechanics and how our body works in relation to movement, how we move and how we can move more efficiently, we have to think about three structures basically: the bones, the joints, and the muscles. The bones provide our rigid structure that can bear weight, that can deliver force sometimes. But if you're considering really movement, we have to think of our skeleton as being made by bones and joints. Otherwise, our body would be like the shell of a crab, that it's a whole piece, one piece set, that can't move. But no, we have joints, we are able to move in a lot of ways. just think about something you have seen on Cirque du Soleil, or some amazing acrobacies you see in gymnastics, and some sport hero you are a fan. Our body can move in amazing ways.
How did you say that last step went? Oh, yes. Shall we try it right through? Won't you sit down, Mr. Gordon?
So, there's the rigid structure, the bones, there's the joints that provide movement, and there are the muscles. And the muscles have the strength, the power to move our bones on a joint. Like, for example, like moving the forearm towards the arm on the elbow joint.